And he said, so I want you to have this book. Well, that was the beginning in my life of one of the greatest gifts that I've ever received that put me into a path. And so from that day forth, as I read Napoleon Hill and then related to him and identified with him and passed it on to as many people as I could. Hey, I got this radio show here and everybody knows I enjoy talking, but I like communicating. I like sharing. I love everybody. I got that from my mother. And it's just a blessing for me to be encouraged by people like Bill the Plant Man and Jim Stovall and Don Green for the work that I do. One of the things that Jim talks about in the book when he tells his story is that 40 years after he met his wife, Crystal, who was also a student at Oral Roberts, and he heard a speaker that it relates this story, which is just absolutely beautiful. I tell you, Jim was just what he called himself, a football jock, didn't care too much about anything. So there's this one little anecdote in here where he's in a huge assembly with about 500 people, maybe 1,500 people, I guess it was. And a person came that was speaking about the work that he does to build wells in poverty communities in Africa. And Oral Roberts himself was there. And at the end of this person's speech on his mission to build wells, he passed the plate and he said to everybody, let's help this person do what he's doing because it's making the world a better place or something of that nature. And he passed the plate. Well, Jim tells this beautiful story that he's got $17, a $10 bill, a $5 bill, and 2 ones in his pocket. And that's all the money he had. And he was going to have a date with Crystal after classes that day. So he had a big decision to make. Should he give? How much should he give? Well, he took $1 out. And when the plate came around, as he started to put it in, Oral Roberts said something that affected and changed Jim's life. And I want to see if I can find that here because I'm going to try to turn the page here. Oral Roberts made a statement that said something to the effect, give me just 5 seconds here. I think I have a bookmark here on this. I think it's on page 61. Let's go to page 61. Okay. Well, let me just read a paragraph here. All of us give a piece of our time and a piece of our money. And if we're able to do that, we'll cultivate an abundance mentality. You see, there are only 2 ways to think about time and money, abundance and scarcity. That's a different part that I wanted to give. I'm not going to quote from the book. It's too much in here. I've got like 40 passages that I earmarked. But the point was this. Jim was faced with a decision. How much should he give? And Oral Roberts happened to say something right when the plate was in front of Jim. And he said, if you don't give freely, then keep your money because it's not worth giving. That's a paraphrase. But Jim Stovall took the $1 out that he was getting ready to give, and he put a $10 bill in thinking, oh, geez, I'm only going to have $7 for my date with Crystal. Well, afterwards, he and Crystal went to dinner. And they didn't really go to dinner. They ate in the dorm because he said, Crystal, I got some good news and some bad news. First of all, I supported the mission to build a well in Africa for people that need water. And I gave $10, but I only have $7 for our date tonight to take you to dinner. And she was really pleased with Jim. And she said, well, let's just eat in the cafeteria at the dorms tonight. Well, that's what they did. But then she asked Jim a question that forever changed his life. She goes, Jim, what are we going to do? Well, he got all excited because that's the first time that she used the collective we instead of you. And he just said something of the nature that I'm going to start a foundation and I'm going to find what my passion is. That's as much as that man's was. And I'm going to give $1 million to that foundation. Well, the whole story in this book about Jim and what he overcame with his blindness and how he became just such a phenomenal person starting the Narrative Television Network. It's all in this book. The book starts off that he's in front of Oral Roberts University, in front of thousands of people, presenting a check for $1 million to start the Stovall Entrepreneurship Center, the Center for Entrepreneurship at Oral Roberts University. And he's relating in the book just how incredible it feels to have reached what it was that you set as your goal. That's what this book is all about. It's not just looking at Jim Stovall's story and thinking what a great man he is, which he truly is. He teaches you how to live with purpose, to find your purpose, to live with purpose, and how to get where you need to go, that you want to go. Let me stop on that thought just for a second and tell you that one of the themes that I really want to bring out today, as I tell you more about Jim Stovall and Don Green, who their stories are so beautifully captured, the purpose of the Napoleon Hill Foundation and what Don's done to grow that, to keep the teachings of Napoleon Hill available to people. We're all about changing the world, making the world a better place. And at the back of the book, there's an appendix that has worksheets on how to get you thinking in the right direction so that you can find what your purpose is. And it gives you strategies and things to learn how to get there. But what I wanted to say is this. I am so blessed to be friends with both Jim and Don, who have supported me so much. Don for about 8 years now, and Jim for about 3, maybe going on 4. And just to be in the company of people like this makes me feel like I've achieved something in my life. But I want to tell you, when you read biographies of great people, and I've read hundreds and hundreds my whole life, I've always loved reading biographies, and had this thought that I want to learn to be like these people that have done so much for the world. And I've never given up myself on believing that I will one day be one of those people. Well, let me just tell you something. This book teaches you more than I've ever come across in any book on how to become the person that you truly want to be. And it starts where you're standing. That's a Napoleon Hill quote. You know, the best time to start is where you are. And so there's all kinds of wisdom in this book that says things like, if you're not a generous person now, you probably never will be. Most people think that, well, when I have my career, when I get rich and everything, and I get all the things I need done, I'll then retire and then start doing charitable things and give more. Well, this book is about doing it now, not putting it off, becoming of the mindset that you need to be like that now. You need to have that become your personality. As Napoleon Hill and Don Green teach every day, you need to be able to know your desire, your burning desire, and never quit, and lay out a plan, action. And that's what Napoleon Hill's all about. I've got a poster that's framed right here in front of me from the Napoleon Hill Foundation. It's called "Stay the Course." George W. Bush. That's a quote. But it's a ship sailing on an ocean, and it's got all the sails of all the principles of the Napoleon Hill philosophy, and the main ones are applied faith, going the extra mile, definite of purpose, positive mental attitude, the mastermind. It's all about creative vision, enthusiasm, having a pleasing personality, teamwork, learning from adversity and defeat, having accurate thinking, having self-discipline, controlled attention, personal initiative, maintenance of sound health, budgeting your time and your money. These are the principles of philosophy of success, cosmic habit force, the higher power that we need to be in touch with. Well, what I'm getting at is that just as Jim Stovall had this reflection, and let me tell you, Jim Stovall is a very, very great person. I mean, he's done so much. I already told you, National Humanitarian of the Year Award. He started the Narrative Television Network for blind people, National Entrepreneur of the Year, personal friends with many presidents and famous people. But he teaches his philosophy of how he gives of his time constantly. So here's what I want to tell you. Every one of us has a tendency to think that we're not good enough. We all have a tendency to think that I'll never be like that person. But let me give you a really simple example, because that's what Don Green did with Jim Stovall in this book. He uses Jim's life story as an example to then teach the principles of the Napoleon Hill philosophy through the foundation, and to talk about the great work that they do, which is philanthropic and giving. The gift of giving, living your legacy. It talks about you will never have a legacy unless you live it now. It's beautiful. But for me, what I experience all the time is I experience that I look at other people that have done great things like Don and Jim, and I think I can be like them. And a lot of people think, hey, Steve, you got a long way to go before you get like them. Well, I might not reach the magnitude of success for the great philanthropic work that they do, but I've carved out my own little niche in a different way. And that's what I want to teach a little bit right now. And as I talk about this book today, I want to share some other thoughts. And what I want to start with is the whole idea that we may not be able to operate at the magnitude or at the level of some other people that we greatly admire, but if we do just our own small part, that's going to change the world. And here's a personal story that I'm going to share with you. Jim Stovall relates his story of success, going from a college kid that had next to nothing, met the love of his life in college. And I have to tell you, I didn't know this part, but when he was in college, he was losing his eyesight, and he could still read a little bit. When Lee Braxton gave him a copy of Think and Grow Rich, he could still read, but it was slow because he had to squint a lot. Well, the school gave him some volunteers to help read to him, and Crystal was one of the four, I think he said, that were assigned by the school to help this football player that needs some help reading get through school. Well, he immediately told the school that he didn't want any of the other three. He only wanted Crystal. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was real good. Anyway, though, so Jim Stovall, though, shares that he has given over 500 people scholarships from his foundation for the full college education. Hundreds of people. Jim believes in education. Don believes in education. I believe in education. But he's given millions of dollars in scholarship funds to help people go through school, and for each of them to be able to pass on their knowledge and their wisdom to help others. Don Green himself, he doesn't talk about this much, but I know personally that every year, he and his wife, they scholarship 50 people to University of Virginia at Wise. He supports 50 people on full scholarships every year personally, not to mention all the millions of dollars that the Napoleon Hill Foundation has provided in scholarships. So what is it I want to tell you is that I'm going to tell you a little story here. So Don Green sent me a copy of a book, 56 copies of One Season of Hope, when I let him know that I was teaching financial literacy in Achievable Dream High School to at-risk students in Williamsburg, Virginia. Well, Don gave me a gift where he said, hey, Steve, I got a copy of a Jim Stovall book here called One Season of Hope. Would you like for me to send you some copies so you can give them to the students? And I was very appreciative. So he did, and I read it the day that I got it. And that's how I called Jim Stovall up, because his phone number is in the back of the book, saying, if you give me a call if you want to talk to me. I'm here for you. And that's how I met Jim Stovall. Well, about 3 years ago, I was on my way to the prison that I have a program out at Baker City, Oregon, Powder River Correctional Facility. And I went through Tulsa, Oklahoma. I drove 900 miles out of my way to go meet Jim Stovall. And Don Green counseled me before I went. Jim Stovall set up the appointment, and then he chose to tell me it's best that I don't come, because he thought that I wanted something more from him to support my foundation, and he already had his mission laid out, and he wasn't going to be able to support me financially.